After our class last week, I received a whole bunch of very interesting questions from the students about Six Sigma and about empowerment and some other topics. So I thought I would just spend a few minutes with you today discussing these topics with you. And what I was going to do was to read some of the questions and then try to answer them. And I broke the questions down into two parts. A bunch of you asked questions about Six Sigma, and then a number of people also asked questions about empowerment. So let me take these two topics one at a time. They're both very interesting topics, and I'm glad that I received these questions from you. So here are some of the questions I received regarding Six Sigma. Sebastian called in and asked, how hard is it to complete the Six Sigma model? Renata asked, what do companies have to do to start Six Sigma? Miguel asked, what if employees don't understand the model? They don't understand what to do. Jose asked a very good question. How do you get certified in Six Sigma? I like that question. Alfredo said, can it fail? Am I applying it correctly? Sergio said, when do you recommend applying Six Sigma? Rodolfo said, are there any other models like Six Sigma? And Emmanuel asked, has a firm accomplished Six Sigma? So let me try to answer these questions. They're all really good questions by going back and reminding you that there were two Six Sigma models. One was the statistical model, which was plus or minus 6 standard deviations, which gave you 99.999% confidence that your products were going to be perfect. The other was a managerial model, and that's the one we're talking about today, because that's the one that we're talking about in terms of the model for changing employee activities and motivating employees. So Six Sigma, as we define it as a management model, is a program to reduce defects, to lower costs, to save time, and to increase customer satisfaction. It's a comprehensive system. It consists of 7 tools that we mentioned in chapter 6 in your textbook. And I went over 4 of those during the lecture, as you recall. I talked about Pareto charts. I talked about the Ishikawa diagram, the cause and effect diagram, the fishbone chart. Remember, it has 3 different names. We also talk about flow charts and statistical process control. Those are 4 of the tools, and there's some other tools that we mentioned in chapter 6 as well. It follows a formal model, and this was developed in the 1980s by Motorola. Motorola had some quality problems, and it set a goal for itself of reducing the defective rate by 90% with its products. And with this Six Sigma model that it developed, this management model, using these tools and some other approaches, it was able to reduce the defects by 90% in the first year alone. And it did this by benchmarking against other companies. It did this by getting employee ideas involved, asking the employees what they thought. It did it by putting incentives on the employees for doing a better job. It did it by providing more training for the employees. It did it by documenting and replacing many of the processes. So processes have to be investigated. You look at them one at a time. How can we improve this process? And if you recall during the lecture, I gave you the example. It doesn't just apply in manufacturing, but the process at the Arnold Palmer Hospital was that a woman didn't leave the hospital. They didn't check out until someone came to pick her up. And that was very expensive. So they finally came up with a process where they drove the lady home who just had the baby. And that opened up the bed for the next patient. So it was ideas from the employees, and processes had to be started from scratch. So General Electric expanded this to Six Sigma in services, and it turns out it employs the same principles, all the same tools that we're using. Now, I think that Six Sigma training is really, really important. And if you go through a course of certification, you can do it while you're at the university. And as a matter of fact, your university offers, I know in Monterey, a certification in Six Sigma. And you can, if you take this course, you can get what's called a green belt. A green belt is the entry level for certification. If you're a green belt in Six Sigma in quality, that is going to make you very powerful in terms of companies wanting to hire you when you graduate. I really recommend that you look into it. And I checked online last night, and there are Six Sigma programs offered all over Mexico. I found them in cities every place. So it's something that if you want to make yourself stand out from the crowd of the other graduates and make yourself more employable, it really would be very useful for you to look into the Six Sigma certification program. The green belt is the first step, then there's black belt is a higher step, and it keeps on going up. But the green belt is a big, big step in the right direction. Now, when does Six Sigma succeed? First of all, it's a huge commitment on the part of management for this program to work. It has to come from the top management. If you or I at the bottom said, oh, I think we should have a Six Sigma program because it's very expensive, if it doesn't have the support of the top chief executive officer, the board of directors, and so on, the president, it's not going to succeed. So it's especially important that top management plan for Six Sigma, that they sell it to all their employees, and that they take an active role. It's a strategic decision when a company goes in to develop a Six Sigma program. So I tried to answer some of your questions regarding Six Sigma, and let me move on. I don't want to spend the whole day boring you with more details, but let me move on to talk about empowerment. And here are the questions that you came up with. Diana, for example, asked, what are the advantages and disadvantages of empowerment? Gabriella said, how can it be promoted in a family business with an old-fashioned boss? Very interesting question, Diana. Gabriella. Pablo said, what's the most effective technique for improving employee empowerment? And Bethel asked, can empowerment have a negative effect on the company? Interesting questions. So let's talk about empowerment for a few minutes. We know from fact that the people who know their job best in a company in terms of doing a particular task are the employees themselves. They really understand what's involved more than their managers do and the CEO does. They know their specific tasks. So if we're coming to someone for information or to try to change the process, to improve the process, it would make sense to me that we go to the employee and ask them for what ideas they have. The other thing we know as a fact is that quality programs that use empowerment in a factory where the workers are empowered to make decisions and to make suggestions and to try to improve processes, they're twice as likely to succeed in terms of having high quality products than companies where the bosses make all the decisions. In other words, I'm the boss, you do what I tell you to do on the assembly line, you do what I tell you to do on your job. The companies where the employees are involved and they're empowered to help make these decisions have twice as much success in terms of quality improvement. How? Well, there are a bunch of factors that make empowerment important. First of all, there's open communication. Everyone has to be able to speak about what's on their mind, to make suggestions without being criticized. You have to have the support of your bosses if you're going to have an empowered organization. You have to move responsibility down to the employees. So as I mentioned, at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, the front desk clerk, the bellhop, anyone who's helping you, the person who brings your suitcases to your room, can give you a $200 credit if you have a complaint that they feel that they can deal with right away. Everyone has the authority to change a customer's dissatisfaction into a customer's satisfaction. And it's important when a customer is unhappy, by the way, to deal with it very quickly, rather than wait a day or 2 days before the customer is finally, the problem is solved. We want to build increasing morale in a company. That helps the empowerment. And we want to build teamwork, and that helps empowerment. And they have such a thing called quality circles, where employees meet once a week in a group, might be 5 or 6 or 10 members, which includes maybe a supervisor and a bunch of employees who are actually doing the job. And they're trained in statistical process control, they're trained in scheduling, they're trained in problem solving, they're trained in planning, and they come up with teams. The employees are not paid more, but these teams come up with ideas for suggestions to try to improve. And because it comes from the top up, these suggestions tend to be very, very useful. Now the question about what do you do with an old-fashioned boss who's not interested in changing, That's such a difficult question. I just don't know the answer. If the boss wants to improve, to increase the quality, increase customer satisfaction, then they need to understand that empowerment is a very powerful tool. But a lot of old-fashioned people, they never were going to trust anyone except themselves to make important decisions. So it's a tough issue when you have that kind of boss. Are there any negatives? Well, the only negative I could think of in trying to answer that last question is if the employees are told you're empowered, but then they're embarrassed because the boss comes back and rescinds or overrides what you just did to try to help the customer, then it dies very quickly. In other words, the employee who's empowered has to know that when they say something, they represent the company and the company will stand behind them. Otherwise, the system is going to fail. So I like your idea of sending me questions, and I hope you enjoy this short video answering some of them. Let's see if it works again. I'm going to be seeing you in 2 days. We're going to be talking about supply chain management. And if you like this system, we'll continue to work with it so I can answer your questions a few days after the lecture. Look forward to seeing you shortly, and have a great day. Goodbye.